Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be discussing how to become Catholic. This video is going to be particular to how to become Catholic for adults. That program is called the Order of Christian Initiation for Adults, and you'll often see it as OCIA. Sometimes people use the now previous term RCIA, which stood for the Rite of Christian Initiation for Adults. But in the past couple of years, the bishops of the United States have switched from RCIA to OCIA. There's also a program for becoming Catholic as a kid, a child. It's known as Order of Christian Initiation for Children. But again, today's video will be discussing particularly how to become Catholic as an adult. So, I wanted to break up a couple of different life situations that someone could be in, and you can kind of reflect on where you might be in your state of life, and then find which state of life pertains to you. And that was kind of vague. Let me explain what I mean. So, the Order of Christian Initiation for Adults prepares an individual to receive some combination of the sacraments of initiation. The sacraments of initiation in the Catholic Church are baptism, confirmation, and Holy Communion, often referred to as First Holy Communion, but it's not just the first one that's a sacrament. It's every time you receive communion that it's a sacrament. That's why I like to call it Holy Communion instead of First Holy Communion, even though for many people it'll become their first one. Okay, so if you have never been baptized before, you would be called a catechumen. If you have been baptized before in another Christian religion outside of Catholicism, you would be considered a candidate. And so the program, OCIA program, will often teach both simultaneously, candidates and catechumen simultaneously. However, the language is very particular and precise because of the strong belief and emphasis on what baptism does for our souls. And that all I mean is that we believe that baptism is necessary for our salvation as Catholics. Now, I could go into a whole nother video explaining things such as baptism by desire and baptism by blood, but that'll be in another video. Today, I just want to discuss catechumen and candidates, and so even if you have classes or preparation time together, it's important to know that you are differentiated by whether or not you've been baptized. Okay, so I want to follow first everything that will be the same between both catechumens and candidates. So let's imagine scenario A. You are an adult and you have decided that you want to learn more about Catholicism. Now, I don't care if you've been baptized or not before in this particular scenario, but you want to learn more about Catholicism. You, by the very nature that you're interested in it, are eligible to sign up for OCIA classes. Now, you might be wondering, well, how do I sign up for OCIA classes? Well, what you would do is you would look on, probably just go on Google or your favorite web browser and look for Catholic Church near me, and then look at their website and try to contact either the pastor, the parochial vicar, so a priest there, or if they have a director of faith formation or someone who's in charge of administering the sacraments or helping people get their sacraments. And you would reach out to one of those people through their contact on the website, and you would say, hey, I'm interested in learning more about Catholicism. And I would say, generally speaking, anyone would get back to you from a local Catholic church within a week, and they would just respond whether or not they can help you. Sometimes there's Catholic churches in different locations, so it could be the one near you. They simply might not offer a full OCIA program based on the fact that maybe they only get one convert or one person become Catholic every other year or something. So sometimes parishes will collaborate, churches will collaborate with one another for their OCIA candidates and catechumen. So if your local church doesn't have an OCIA program, you might have to reach out to 2, 3, maybe sometimes 4 churches to find one that has an OCIA program. Okay, so let's say that you're interested in learning more about Catholicism and you go through the OCIA program. You start taking a couple of classes, usually some weeknight, and often with a group of people, other people who are interested in learning more, and you decide that you do not want to become Catholic. That's okay. You can drop the program whenever. With that said, I would hope that you don't drop the program, and I hope you do find a good one. You'll find many different posters on Reddit, for example, that just talk about how terrible the OCIA program is. And that really weighs on my heart. I just want you to not get these really lofty expectations that this program will be perfect. You will definitely have to supplement your learning in any OCIA program with your own research and learning about Catholicism. The unfortunate reality is that some parishes, they just don't have the capacity to have someone teach these programs in the evening. So they often just have it be volunteer-led. And there's nothing wrong with volunteers. In fact, I love having volunteers. But the unfortunate reality is that sometimes these volunteers just, they don't know their faith as well as they should. And I'm not saying that, every priest or director of faith formation knows it better, but oftentimes people such as priests, deacons, religious formators, they have gone through strict training or education in order to get that position, whereas volunteers are often just someone who's been a Catholic for their entire life or a convert themselves, and they feel passionate about it, so they teach it. Okay, so that was a long scenario. Scenario A is just someone who's interested in Catholicism. They're not even sure if they're convinced of its truth, so they don't know if they want to convert. They may or may not drop out of the class until they are fully convinced. Scenario B is probably the one that you clicked on this video for, and it's going to be encompassed for both candidates and catechumen. And I'll speak about a bunch of that stuff now. So, person B, you have had a deep encounter with the Lord, and you decided that you are really convinced that you want to become Catholic. So just like the person in scenario A, you decide to sign up for OCIA classes. Now, what does an OCIA class look like? Or why do we have them? Well, I want to break it down for you. So, why do we have OCIA classes in general? I could go into almost any Protestant church today, or many of them at least, and I could just say, hey, I want to be baptized, and they would baptize me on the spot. Well, Catholics believe in a period of formation for baptism and the other sacraments for that matter, for a couple of reasons. One, because of the traditional practice. It has always been, even when we read about it in terms of St. Augustine converting, of this being a period of formation before someone can receive the sacraments. But that still doesn't quite answer the question. And I think it boils down to, I think it's in an epistle of St. Peter where he says, essentially, it is better to not be baptized than to be baptized and apostatize. And apostatize just means to reject your faith. In other words, St. Peter has this really strong language that it is so important that once you become baptized, especially as an adult, that you retain your faith and you practice it. And I could go into a whole other video about that whole verse and the whole thoughts behind that tradition. But anyway, there's a period of formation, these OCIA classes, for anyone who's interested in becoming baptized. And it's really beautiful, and I myself am an OCIA director, and I teach faith formation, and so I've taught many people OCIA classes, and really what I wanted to share as well is that These classes have a typical model all across the entire United States. I don't know what it might look like in other countries, but at least in the United States. Usually on a weeknight. So if you work weeknights, you might just have to find someone who can work with you. And then the classes, what do they teach and what do they represent and whatever else? They teach you the fundamentals of the Catholic faith. At least that's what they're supposed to do. And in addition to teaching you the fundamentals of the Catholic faith, they're also supposed to prepare you for receiving the sacraments worthily. So for example, if I wanted to go and receive, let's hypothetically say like a Medal of Honor or something like that, I probably wouldn't go in like a tank top and, really messy hair and shorts, because that wouldn't be appropriate for the moment, right? And a much more large scale, I wouldn't just go in and get baptized when the Catholic Church believes so many strong things about baptism or confirmation or Holy Communion. So some of the things that you would learn are about the sacraments, the 7 sacraments of the Catholic Church. You would probably learn about the Nicene Creed, the one holy Catholic Apostolic Church, the 4 marks of the faith. You would learn about, Jesus and his passion, his resurrection, how Jesus is truly present in the Eucharist. You learn so many different things, and some parishes, some OCI programs meet weekly, some meet once or twice a month, and it can kind of change, and each program is kind of unique, and I think that's kind of beautiful. Alright, now I want to jump into some particulars about the OCI program outside of classes and outside of deciding whether or not you are going to become Catholic. So assuming that a candidate is going to become Catholic, let's say that you were baptized in, let's say, the Lutheran faith, and you decided that you think Catholicism is true. You go through all the classes. What else happens? That's a good question. So in addition to all of the classes, there's a few rites. So one of the reasons that RCIA, the Rite of Christian Initiation for Adults, changed to OCIA, the Order of Christian Initiation for Adults, is because some people were confused when there are multiple rites that happen within the OCIA program. And when you say the Rite for Christian Initiation, it sounds like there's really only one, but in fact, there's more than one. So for a candidate, the typical set of rites that they would go through is the rite of acceptance or the rite of welcome and acceptance. They're often lumped together. And then the rites of sending an election. And both of those, so the rite of welcome and acceptance, the rite of sending an election, candidates and catechumens will do those together. All right, and then in addition to that, another rite that all candidates will do is the actual rite where they receive their sacraments. So again, a candidate is someone who has been baptized before. So when does someone receive their sacraments as an adult? Well, one of the reasons I started with speaking about a candidate is, in all honesty, a candidate can receive confirmation and their first Holy Communion at really any time throughout the year. Now, there is a very, very strong preference that it's at the Easter Vigil. The Easter Vigil is the night before Easter, and there's this really beautiful Mass where it's candlelit and someone sings Lumen Christi, the light of Christ, and then all the church becomes lit up by candles instead of by lights. And then this rite takes place at night, and it's just really profound and really beautiful. And that's when a priest can give a candidate confirmation and potentially their first Holy Communion, or if they've already received Holy Communion, just a normal communion. All right, so even though they can receive it any Sunday, again, the preference is that they receive it at the Easter Vigil. Now, for catechumens, unless there is some emergency or or reason to believe that they can't receive at the Easter Vigil, again, some emergency, they, like catechumens, have to receive at the Easter Vigil. And it goes back to this really long belief system and that's in place for Catholics. And that belief is that if Jesus were to come again, the parousia, the second coming, is that this long-standing belief is that he would come again at Easter. And so the Easter Vigil is this night before Easter to prepare for the Messiah's second coming. It's this really beautiful practice. Again, there's a lot to unpack. I could probably make another video about it. But just know that it is a long-standing practice. It didn't start that way 15 years ago. It's always been that way. But I also want to speak about, if you've never been baptized before, what might you do to go through OCIA? Well, just like a candidate, you're going to look through all of the different churches near you, find an OCIA program, take the classes, and then you'll also have these rites with the candidates for the rite of welcome, the rite of acceptance. They're the same, basically. And then the rite of sending and election. So all those rites you'll do together with the candidates. In addition to those, though, you'll also have something called the 3 scrutinies. The 3 scrutinies happen on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Sundays of Lent. And the 3 scrutinies are actually a kind of minor exorcism, and they happen within the context of a Mass during those Sundays of Lent. Now, it's not an exorcism in the sense of like you'll see in the movie The Exorcist. You don't have to be afraid. It's a special blessing. It's a prayer done by the priest, and it's a really special moment where the priest and really the entire congregation pray for you, and sometimes over you, and in the hopes that you will be prepared and ready to receive the sacrament of baptism, which hopefully you'll recognize will change your life once you receive it. So again, in addition to the rites that you'll do with the candidates, catechumen also have the 3 scrutinies. And they usually last 5 to 10 minutes. It's not terribly long. And then, like the candidates, you'll also go to the Easter Vigil. A few points that I wanted to bring up about the Easter Vigil is that the Mass happens at night. Most I've seen start around 8 p.m. local time, their local time. And in addition to that, because of the beautiful practice, and it's really the most elaborate Mass that exists in the church, it usually lasts a couple of hours. And I've seen some where there are 40 people who enter the Catholic Church at one Easter Vigil Mass, and it can go sometimes for 2.5, 3+ hours. So be prepared for it to be long. So again, if I were to summarize how to become Catholic, I would say, first, you're interested in Catholicism. So you on Google, or your favorite web browser, and you look at Catholic churches near me. Once you do that, you make contact. They're not going to reach out to you. You have to make contact with them. And again, I apologize in advance. There'll be plenty of churches, maybe your first 1 or 2, who maybe they're on vacation or something, and they're going to take a while. So reach out to a few Catholic churches and just say, hey, I'm interested in becoming Catholic. Can you help me? So that's part number 1. Let's say they help you and they're going to have you register for OCIA. Sometimes there's a cost for OCIA. However, that instruction cost, because it's preparing you for a sacrament, can never really be enforced. So if you tell them, look, I can't afford to pay for a registration, sometimes like at the parish I teach at, I think it's $40 for their materials, and we have a luncheon and a party. So it just helps offset the cost of a lot of the materials. Let's say we even bumped it up to $150. I'm not saying we will, but let's say we did. It's not like we're making our money back because we give so much to each person who's in our program. But there's plenty of people who can't even afford the $40 that we currently charge, and so it's totally within your right to say that to who's ever in charge of OCIA, and they would be bound, actually, to give you a scholarship. In other words, to not charge you to prepare you for the sacraments. Now, I can make an entire video about that, but I'm not going to make it a focus right now. With that in mind, if you can afford it, I really do encourage you to pay for the registration fee, because you will get a lot of content in return, whether it's physical or mental, spiritual, etc. It'll be well worth it. Okay, so found an OCA program, you signed up for classes, you go through all the classes and do any potential homework that might be assigned. You then go through all the rites that you're supposed to go to. So those are the 4 steps so far. And then last but not least, you show up to the Easter Vigil and you get your sacraments. Now, whether you are a catechumen, so you received baptism, confirmation, and your first Holy Communion all in one night, or you're a candidate and you received confirmation and First Communion, then you have become Catholic. One side note is, if you are baptized Catholic and you, let's say you're maybe as an infant, your family left the faith and you start practicing another religion and you come back to the faith as an adult, you do not have to get baptized again. And in fact, if it's a valid and licit baptism in any religion or any church, as long as it's valid and licit, you cannot get baptized again, because baptism only happens once. So that's just a quick note. But even after you get your sacraments at the Easter Vigil, a good OCIA program is still not over. And that's because there's a period of 50 days between the Easter Vigil and Easter, I guess, and after Easter, and so basically leading up to the Feast of Pentecost. And those 50 days are called mystagogy. And mystagogy is a post-sacramental preparation program. And really, they can't, the OCA teachers, volunteers, they can't force you to go because you already got your sacraments. However, it is really important, in my opinion, that you stay for mystagogy, because oftentimes there's so much extra that you can learn about the Catholic faith that you're not going to learn on your own, probably because you're busy and you have a life and a family to take care of, and you're not going to find this content out in any other way. And so mystagogy, again, is like a continuation of those OCA classes usually, but it's extra content that they couldn't fit in to their normal class curriculum. And in fact, as an OCA director, what I've done before is something like Marian apparitions. They are not essential to learning about the sacraments to become a Catholic, but I still really, really want all the candidates and catechumen to learn about it. So Marian apparitions are an example of something that I would teach in mystagogy, and I have taught in mystagogy before, but it just didn't have space to teach about Marian apparitions within the classes to prepare someone to become Catholic. Alright, that was a lot, and I truly hope that if you're considering becoming Catholic and you want to learn more, please ask down below in the comments of this episode. You could try and reach out to me directly, I guess, if you can find me. Yeah, just let's have a community that helps one another. And becoming Catholic, or being Catholic in my case, has been one of the biggest and best blessings of my entire life. And it truly helps me to live a happier, healthier, and more successful life. And so I would just really pray for anyone who watches this and is interested in how to become Catholic, that if I didn't explain anything thoroughly enough, that you can have the courage to leave a comment and ask, or reach out, or just Google or research how to become Catholic in addition to this video, because I am a sinner and I know I probably made many mistakes, but I just find it so important that people know the process of becoming a Catholic, that I want to put out even this imperfect video out there. Alright, thank you so much for watching. if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you loved it, I would really appreciate you subscribing to my channel. And I hope you have a really blessed day.